I woke up this morning ready to write a regular blog, and I started to look for kind of the inspiration, which I knew was going to be related to a Facebook memory that popped up from 2 years ago when I left a district that I was truly connected with, had wonderful relationships, and this was one of the pictures that popped up. The beautiful artwork that they created and the quote at the bottom, how lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard. And I was reflecting on both this image and the work that had happened last week in my current position in a new district and how I was going to make that all connect. And instead, I decided to open up a slide deck so that if there were any quotes that inspired you, you could pull them, and also any resources. So I'm just going to talk through a little bit of my story, and just like it would be written in a blog, and then summarize it in my blog. So this quote really does connect to what is essential, in my opinion, what I value in our work in education is those relationships. And so I strive, and I think the people that I work with strive to build relationships not just with their colleagues, but also with their students that make it hard to say goodbye. And so as we close the school year, just reflecting on that and thinking through, was it hard to say goodbye and why? And, it's such a bittersweet time. So after I left my old district that I had been a teacher and grade leader and done some district work and assistant principalship, it really was this quote here from Peter DeWitt. Growth is one of the most important aspects of our profession, whether we're looking at students, teachers, or leaders. And, for me, it was important for me to go out and grow and become a principal, and now an assistant director of elementary ed. But just thinking that was the next quote I jumped to today. But with growth comes, some scariness, people not knowing you the way that they did know you in former experiences. And, we can equate this to ourselves as educators, but we can also think through the experience that students have each year when they enter a new learning space. So these two quotes really are quotes that resonate with me in my experiences, kind of taking risks and being who I am as a leader in a new district, trying to establish those relationships, but also leaning on practices that I think will have the impact that they need to move educators forward, and to partner with them in the work to help students. So the first one's being ourselves means sometimes having to find the courage to stand alone. And so that's been something that's been really true for me this year in trying to establish myself in a new position, in a new leadership team, in a new role, and digging deep into myself to bring what I have to the table each day. And then integrity is choosing courage over comfort. It's choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, or easy. And it's practicing your values, not just professing them. And so as I went into some work with some school level teams this week, I really did use this to reflect at the end of each of our sessions. We were doing some planning about how we were going to move the schools forward next year in their turnaround plans, and thinking through the components that had to be attained, but then also digging into the emotion around the work and trying to each day help the educators better formulate the why in the work, so that it could move them forward, and being really honest about what it was they knew and they didn't know, and how we were really going to be able to work collaboratively in the work moving forward. And so we leaned on the work of John Hattie and Peter DeWitt to frame us. And on the last day of the work, we worked for 3 days. I was able to reflect with some other educational leaders on the progress we had made, and really felt like on the last day that this was something that we had to bring to the forefront, because we have different populations of students. We sometimes, it's easier to think about the barriers that come up for us in our teaching, but then not push past them. And so we leaned on the work of John Hattie related to collective teacher efficacy and the effect size that it can have when we really do work together. And these educators that were in the room these past 3 days really did work together, but I wanted them to see the effect size when we were truly honest, opened ourselves up, used data to drive our work, and stay committed to the work, that we could potentially move students 1.57, which is close to 3 years worth when we're really, really doing the work together. But this second quote here, collective teacher efficacy, refers to collective self-perception that teachers in given schools make an educational difference to their students over and above the educational impact of their homes and communities. I think that's really important, especially in our diverse community, because again, like I said, the barriers. So we use this to guide our work moving forward. We also talked a lot about Simon Sinek and his work around why, and articulating our why before we go to the how and the what, which is really important in this process of developing plans that will move schools forward, really helping to prioritize the work. So educators in this particular session used a Padlet, and they populated the Padlet on their why for the work in turnaround. And then I took all of their responses and made a Google Doc and used the word cloud feature in Google Doc to have it pull out the top 10 words that surfaced, which, as you'll notice, students is at the center, and then the top 25 and the top 50. And it's just helpful for us to see where our priorities lie, that we're looking for quality. Children are there, students, education, achieving, progressing forward, being collective, having a common experience. So with one school that I worked with, we talked through what our priorities were, because the day prior there was a very long list, which was all well intended, but how were we really going to move the school forward? And these two quotes held true for us. This one really we did unpack a lot. The real cost of complexity is stagnation. We get barely any improvement, even though we have lots of change. And so this was a real feeling in the team when, I asked them to be really honest, to think through their experiences over time, whether they were a new teacher in their first year at the school, or whether they had been there historically. And they really did unpack this quote and thought through the fact that, yes, this felt like where they were at right now, that they weren't moving forward in the timely manner that they had hoped. And so this quote really did stimulate some good conversation. And from there, the team decided that they would develop a mantra for the school, and they brainstormed lots of different ideas, but they came up with dig deep, move forward together. And they unpacked what this meant both for themselves as educators and also what it meant for students. So because we came to the table on our last day of planning with honesty, because we were vulnerable, because we were rooted in our why, that we wanted to do what's best for students, we were able to come up with a mantra for the work, and then develop goals moving forward. Again, so my point for this video is to go back to the importance of relationships, the importance of thinking through at the end of our work. We want it to be hard to say goodbye. We want to be honest in the work, and we want to dig deep and lead with courage.